Hello, this is Miles Hunt from the Wonderstuff event 414, and I am appearing on the Adam Talks 2 podcast.
Welcome to the Adam Talks 2 podcast, where each and every week I'll be talking to a special guest about, well, whatever they want to talk about, as long as it's interesting, of course. Now, whether you are listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Amazon Music, make sure to hit subscribe or follow to ensure that you never miss a show. By following the show on social media, you will also get the opportunity to hear about all of my future guests and get the chance to have your question read out on a future show. Just search for Adam Talks 2 on X, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also get in touch by emailing the show on adamtalks2@gmail.com. Now, enough from me. Let's get on with this week's guest.
Hi, welcome back to another Adam Talks 2 podcast. Who am I talking to today?
That'd be me, Miles Hunt.
Miles, tell us a bit more about yourself for those listeners tuning in and may or may not have heard of you.
I have been singing, playing guitar, and writing songs for a band called the Wonderstuff 40 years. I'm also in another band called Vent 414, which started 30 years ago. And I have a solo thing. I do solo shows, rack on touring and, telling stories, playing songs. I've written 3 books about my time in the Wonderstuff. And is that enough?
I think that'll do. That's teasing people in already. That's great to hear. So a little bit of my history with yourself, Miles. Not that we've met before, but you absolutely formed part of my growing up when I was at university, your songs and those kind of things. And doing a little bit of research today, I was absolutely amazed to find out your biggest single, Size of a Cow. Well, that wasn't your biggest single, actually, because you had a Dizzy as well, which we'll come on to. But Size of a Cow never made it to number 1. I flabbergasted, because that was the soundtrack of the summer of April 1991 for me.
Well, if these things mattered, it'd be something to be concerned about. They don't, so I'm not.
Well, you say they don't matter, but I was looking at the charts of that, because it was pretty much, what was that, 35 years ago today the single was released. I think maybe tomorrow it was released, 35 years ago. And you were kept off number 1 by the one and only and James Sit Down amongst 2 of them, and Whole of the Moon.
Both wonderful songs, but I'm sure all artists concerned would agree that it's not a competition, so we couldn't care less about the chart positions.
Okay, well, we won't talk about the chart positions then, but what I do want to talk about is because when I was getting ready for this show today, I thought, what should I wear? What should I wear? Should I put on my tartan suit? Because when I think back to that video, that tartan suit and the long flowing red hair were the things that I remember about. Do you still have that tartan suit?
No.
No, okay. Well, that shut down that conversation very quickly.
Yeah. Well, just simply no.
All right. Well, we do usually ask our guests, sorry, not our guests, our listeners to write in songs and those kind of things. And before I go into some of those later on, there was one, because when I went back and watched the video of Size of a Cow, we're not going to just spend the whole time on that, but this really kind of summarizes what I remember about the time, and I just want to see if it kind of hits home with you. There was a comment on the YouTube video on there, and it said, This song reminds me of when I worked in a holiday camp. No wife, no mortgage, no house, no kids, no responsibility, no health issues, just good old rock and roll, sex and drink. Those were the days. Does that pretty much sum up the Wonderstuff back in those days?
No. It's funny that 2 of the original members have passed away, so I suppose that's quite rock and roll, but it didn't feel very rock and roll at the time. And sex, I was happily married, so read into that what you like. And what was the other thing?
Oh, drink. Those were the days. Yeah.
There was a fair bit of boozing going on, but to be honest, the working at a holiday camp actually sounds a lot more exciting than what we were doing.
So to think back to those days, when I talk to my guests, I usually talk about how the music industry has changed. And obviously this year was, as I said, 35 years since the release of Never Liked Elvis. And obviously that single as well. Massive change in the music industry. But thinking more from a financial point of view, because I read a couple of quotes from you about the single. It was your most successful financially single. Back in those
No,
days,
it'd
could you
be
have
most
retired on the
sort
back of
of
that?
commercially, really, but yeah.
What was it like
I,
back in those days? Is that it's like could you have put your feet up at that point and lived off the royalties for the rest of your life, or was that just a
I
hoax
don't know where
in those
you've got
days?
the idea that having a single in the top five earns you a load of money when you're 1.5 million in the hole still to the record company, with what it costs to run a band, to tour a band. I've got I I could count what I've made out of size of a cow on less than an average person's now yearly income.
Really?
So yeah.
So was that down to the record contract, the record company? What was
Well, the record company give you loads of money to help tour the world to promote the albums, and making videos cost a fortune back then. Not that I was interested in making videos,
Mm.
but you had to do it. It all just cost. It was we were in the studio for over 3 months at the 1,200 quid a day plus. It's a complete fallacy that having singles in the charts, which we've already covered, is
Mm.
meaningless. Makes you a load of money. It don't.
So going back to that financial side of it, so is it the touring, the selling the merch, especially these days? I'm guessing that's where you can make a living off it. Miles, are you there? Miles, you disappeared for a second then. Apologies. Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
yeah,
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say sorry. So I'll repeat the question and we'll edit out. So you're saying that obviously very expensive being in the band. So I take it these days that the money's made from touring, merchandise, ticket sales, those kind of things.
yeah. How'd you make your money?
Me, well, I'm glad you asked that actually, because I can plug my other side hustle here. No, I actually work in finance. So, yeah, I have a day-to-day job. This is just a passion project of me talking to the people I grew up listening to. So, yeah, but no, I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm just, for the people who are following in your footsteps, I'm always very curious as to, would you tell people, go and do it?
I don't know any young people that would ever ask my advice. I didn't ask anybody's advice when, if young people want to pick up guitars, play drums, write songs, sing, muck around with laptops and make music, it's entirely in their hands. They don't need permission anymore, which is sort of slightly different. You can release your music into the world via YouTube or any of the streaming platforms without going to the gatekeepers that were the publishing companies and the record companies of old. So I would say that they've got a lot more freedom to get their music out. So then, if you want to do it, do it. Don't don't listen to what I would advise.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, finishing off that part of the band's career, because obviously you had a hiatus. The biggest, I know we don't go into commercial, but the biggest hit would have been Dizzy with Vic and Bob. So, can you tell us about how that came about? Did you approach them? Did they approach you? Was it a record company that put you together?
No, it was a drunken night somewhere that I met Jim Moyer, aka Vic Reeves, and he asked if we would be his backing band on his next single. He'd already had a hit single that he'd done with other people. Was that Abide with Me or Born Free?
Born Free, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and would sing like it being enjoyable. I was in the studio for like a day. I sang on it for like less than half of the song, and then we did a video. It was on Total Pops. Yeah. So and the thing that I take from it is that I've really, if you can call it a lifelong friendship from 35 years ago, I'm still very good friends with Jim. He's a lovely man, and he's helped me out when I've been in a bind. And yeah, so that's my abiding memory, that I made a really lovely friend.
Brilliant. Well, funny enough, I saw a story with Bob Mortimer talking about that appearance on Top of the Pops and saying that you had a tradition of drinking a shot of vodka before you went up on stage, something like that. And he said
Yeah,
because you kept on getting delayed, you kept on
yeah.
drinking more and more.
Bob's memory's shot to shit. He said tumblers of vodka. It was little shots of tequila.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So we dispelled that one. So yeah, so going back to the songwriting, obviously we moved forward and the band split up in the late 90s, I think it was. You'll know better than me. But let's just go back to that process because you said that you haven't got any kind of guidance for people getting into the industry. What kind of inspires you, the music behind it? What's your process?
I genuinely just like making a noise, and if I can do that with my mates, which I'm lucky enough to be able to, if that's a process, that's the process.
Right. Okay. So you split up for a little while. What prompted getting back together?
We all went off and did different things. I formed a band with Pete Howard and Morgan Nichols called Vent 414. Did that for about 18 months. Malk and Martin started a band called We Know Where You Live with Ange Doolittle from Eats. I think they maybe did that for a couple of years as well. And then so we broke up in '94. I did some TV presenting for MTV Europe. Then I did the other band. And then 98, 99, myself and Malk Treese, our guitarist, started doing like duo acoustic shows, mostly in North America, at the invite of some lovely friends from New Jersey. So we did that for a couple of years on and off. And then an agent got in touch with us in the UK and said, I see you doing that in the US. Why don't you do it in the UK? So we did. And then another agent and promoter said, as you and Malk are working together again, do you think there's any chance you'd put the band back together again? So I spoke to the other two Martins from the band and they were up for it. So in 2000, we did 5 nights at the Kentish Town Forum with it was the original drummer and the original violinist. And we had our good friend Stuart Quinnell join us on bass guitar because I didn't want to work with the previous bass player. Did that, and then I think we did that on and off for about 3 years to about 2003 with that lineup. And then the two Martins decided they didn't want to be in the band with me anymore, so they cleared off, and me and Malk carried on as it has been pretty much since. So it all hangs around me and Malk. We've had the violinist Erica Knuckles, violinist vocalist, with us now for 22 years. And the lineup we have now, Pete Howard from Vent 414's drumming with us, Mark Gemini Thwaite, who's the list of people Mark's played with is absurd. It's from Peter Murphy to Gary Newman, Tricky, The Mission. He's our second guitarist, and Tim Sewell, bass player, who was in Eat, who along with Pete Howard, who were probably my favourite of the guitar band. It's late 90s. So yeah, it's a solid lineup, and this year's the 40th anniversary, and yeah, we're just going to keep going.
Brilliant. And also it's been a little while since you've done a new album, Better Being Lucky in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Is there more material to come?
It's been talked about. Currently, I've spent the last year or so working on a new Vent 414 album, which is out in May, and the rest of this year is pretty much gigging for the Wonderstuff and a few for Vent 414. I'm in the middle of a solo acoustic tour for I've got another 4 weeks of that to go. So we'll see what happens. We'll get to the end of the year, see what our lovely agent has in the way of ideas for us for 27. I would like to think that the 6 of us in the band could throw around a few ideas, get into a room and record what would be a 10th album. I would like to do that, if only to get it into double figures. So we'll see. It's been talked about.
So when you're setting up your year and you said about your agent, he's the one who, or he or she, I don't know, sorry.
It is a he, yeah.
It is a he, yeah. Sets up what you're going to be doing. But how do you decide if you're going to go on a tour, if you're going to write an album, who you're going to record it with, which band? What kind of decides that for you?
I don't know really. It just falls into place.
Right. Do you sometimes think, actually, do you know what? I've written this song. This has more of a Wonderstuff vibe, or
No,
no?
I don't do that. I don't write on my own anymore. And if I'm in a room with the two guys from Vent 414, it's clearly a Vent 414 album. If I'm in a room with members of the Wonderstuff, all of them or some of them,
Yeah.
it's clearly a Wonderstuff track or album. I don't sit around trying to write songs anymore. Those days are over. I like to write with the people in the band.
That's good. That's good. Well, just going back to that process, as I said, we've asked a lot of our listeners to come up with some questions for you. So there was one, obviously, super fan. He might be outside your window. I don't know, because he sent so many questions in. So hopefully he hasn't got a restraining order, and this brings back bad memories. But a special thank you to Mark Sachs, who's out there, who asked, as I said, quite a few questions. I'm not going to read them all. You'd be glad to know, but I'll read a couple of them to you if that's okay. So the first one I wanted to bring up, I'm just going to read this. Oscar Wilde talked about music being the art closest to tears and memory, and your song "Was I Meant to Be Sorry" feels like a great example of that. Which other artists' songs resonate with you personally in the same way when you hear them?
I don't know. I don't carry around an inventory of songs.
What's number one on your playlist then? Let's go for that then. What's your go-to album that's not your own?
Again, I don't. I've heard thousands and thousands of records, and I'm rarely in the same mood. So whatever suits me in whatever mood I'm in.
Fair enough. So coming to a Wonderstuff gig or an acoustic gig from yourself, what can they expect to hear? Is it just you telling stories? Is it just coming out singing the songs? What would new fans to you expect to hear when they listen or come to a gig?
Well, the band play. The set that we're planning for this year is kind of, a fairly representative collection of songs from all the years gone by. We've been playing a long time now, so we pretty much know what our audience want to hear. So you try and include as many of them as possible. My song got written, or maybe a story that over the years has attached itself to a song, which it happens. Hopefully they're funny, which as I've got older, I think my real pleasure of being on stage, particularly at the solo gigs, is to make people laugh more than I love it when people sing along, and it's nice to get applause at the end of a song, but I think my real pleasure is getting a laugh out of people.
Yeah. So how long do you think you're going to carry on doing this for, Miles?
Till I drop.
Till you drop. Well, nowhere to go with that one, is there?
I got no other plans. I took another job. I didn't particularly want to have a musical year in 2022, so I took another job, part-time job, working at a local brewery as a drayman through the summer, and that was great. But it gave me perhaps a new, because I hadn't had a job since I was 18, 19. So it gave me a new appreciation of getting up in the morning and being part of being part of somebody else's business, and I really enjoyed doing that. That was great. However, it was physically very tiring. Like, I think at the first day I got back from a day delivering, I think it was the first time I'd ever been physically tired in my life. Mm-hmm. It was a new physical. It was the experience of being physically tired was brand new to me. I get tired from being on the road and stuff, but that to me, I've identified that as a mental tiredness.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I've said in the past, I'm exhausted, it's like my head's got nothing more to give. Whereas doing a physical job for those 7 months, my body was, and I remember getting home from work the first day and sitting on the couch and laughing. Like my body has never felt like this. So that was lovely. But I'm 60 in a couple of months, so humping 9-gallon barrels of beer around isn't something that's likely to be in my future.
Once again, you've absolutely flabbergasted me. What, the question on all of my listeners, and most probably the reaction that I've got here, what possessed you last year to suddenly become a drayman and delivering barrels of beer? It's just, that's one of the most wild tangents I think I've ever heard from one of my guests. Not as anything wrong with it. I'm just curious.
I just wanted. I didn't want to. I didn't want to work on music. I knew I didn't. It was 2022 that I did it. I spent all the sort of pandemic period and lockdowns writing, demoing, and recording. So when it got to 22, when the world opened up again for real, I'm like, okay, I don't want to sit on the couch with a guitar this summer. I don't want to sit in front of a computer demoing. I don't want to be locked in windowless rooms in studios. I just want to do something different. And the local brewery to me, the 3 Tons, is only 7 mile away, and I follow them on the socials. And I just saw that they were advertising for drays, so I wandered in there and said, and they laughed, and I said, "What do I got to do?" And they just said, "Be here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m." So I did, and that was the next 7 months of my life.
Well, that's brilliant. It plays into my final question I'm going to ask you from the listeners. Once again, from Mark Sachs, who said, the original lineup had some proper Midland jobs. Doesn't get much more Midland than working for a Midland brewery. Before the band took off, litter pickering, dole offices, designing toilets. I don't know about that one. Roadie for the Pogues. What do you reckon those gigs taught the band that carried into the music? Does it? I mean, you've done that now last year. Is that kind of led to you creatively changing music-wise?
No, I think other than Martin Jilks, our original drummer, so he's a draftsman, so he clearly trained at that. I think the other jobs that you mentioned, there was one more, Malk, our guitarist, I think he collected the coins out of gaming machines in pubs. So they're not career jobs, they're not passion jobs. I didn't mind doing my jobs. Being a litter picker was brilliant because you didn't have to think about it. You saw litter, got rid of it, and that was all you had to think about in terms of the job. So the rest of the time, I'd got tunes going around in my head. I'd got dreams going around in my head that, like, okay, I know litter picking isn't my future. So I had time to think about what I did want to do. And then when we got the opportunity to tour and to make records, we were all very, very grateful that we'd managed to put those workaday jobs behind us. Yeah.
So, one thing I was just going to finish with is I don't usually signpost other interviews I've got coming up, but someone that I'm actually talking to in about 2 hours' time. I'm going to give you the opportunity to pose a really horrible question to him, if you like. So I'm talking to a member of Popple Eat Itself, who I know, another Midlands band, and had some connection to yourselves in the early days. So I'm talking to Adam Mole. I don't know if you know Adam or not.
Of course I do. I've been messaging with him this morning. I didn't know he was doing this.
Well, remind him then, if you can, that he's on. But yeah, do you want to stitch him up by asking something that's going to throw him completely?
Just tell him I'm off to Craven Arms post office in a little while, and I believe the parking's very good.
Right, okay. I'm sure he'll know what that means. So on that note then, thanks again for joining us today. Tell us a few more.
No worries.
When are the gigs? End of October? Or beginning of October, I should say, for the Wonderstuff.
All through October, but we're doing festivals. If people just go to thewonderstuff.co.uk, all the listings for my solo stuff, for the Eventful and 4 shows, and all of the many, many Wonderstuff gigs this year are all listed in the live section.
Well, Miles, thanks again for joining us. Really enjoyed our chat. And
Right.
yeah, hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon. Take care.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Well, that's it for another week. Hopefully you enjoyed the show and will join us again next time. But before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or follow on whatever platform you are listening on to guarantee that you don't miss any future episodes. And if you want to ask any of our future guests a question or two, make sure you're following us on social media, where you'll hear about the upcoming guests and get to find out how to pose a question to them. And finally, if you want to get in touch, you can email the show using the adamtalks2@gmail.com address. See you next time.